Here's how I draw any head/face in any angle. Please note that I am not a professional, and the tips and tricks I'm going to share are what personally works for me. First things first, we need to grab a reference. You should always use references when tackling difficult angles and poses. There's also many great resources such as Sketchfab, where you can find tons of 3D models that you can use as a reference as well. To start, let's draw a head angle in a 3/4 view. When drawing anything, you should always break down your subject into simple shapes. The very first thing I see when looking at this reference is this circle, this line angled this way, and another line angled this way. In this stage of the drawing, we are not worried about the details at all. You'll also notice that I drew this center line. Because the head is naturally quite round, the center line should also not be completely straight. It slightly curves on the front side of the face, but it also curves even more as we go further to the top of the head. The next important guideline that I establish is the eye line. Going back to the reference again, I can see that the eye line is about halfway on the face. And remember, because the head is round, the eye line wraps around the head to the ear. When drawing the facial features, make sure you remember that the hairline to the brow line, nose, and chin are all equal thirds. After drawing all of the necessary guidelines, you can go ahead and add all the details you want. I won't be covering how to draw the facial features in this video, but if that's something you want to see, please let me know in the comments below. For this reference, our subject is looking downwards, which is a bit more challenging than a 3/4 view. Normally, we would start off with a circle, but after observing the reference, the general shape I see is more ovular. Always keep in mind that shapes, guidelines, and proportions all change depending on the angle and position. All that means is we can just adapt and figure out something more fitting. For this head angle, I draw an oval, a line angled this way, and another this way. You might notice that the center line for this head angle is much more curved because we can see more of the top of the head. As I observe further, I can see that because of this angle, this person's facial features don't have equal third proportions like the 3/4 view. In fact, the distance from the hairline, eyebrow, and nose seem pretty equal, but the distance from the nose to the chin is much shorter. You'll notice that throughout this video, I will continuously preach that observation is your best friend when drawing anything. If I hadn't taken the time to notice this detail, the drawing would have turned out much differently. And now I will draw in the eyeline. Remember again that the head is round, so the eyeline should have some curvature. You can continue that curvature around the head so that it connects with the top of the ear. Unlike with the 3/4 view, where we were able to find the eyeline by dividing the head in half, unfortunately that won't help us here. But we can use our lines in a different way. By measuring the farthest edge of the head on the left and right, we can connect them and draw a line in the middle. As you can see, the line shows us that it connects to one of the corners of her eye. This may seem unimportant, but small bits of info like this can really help us along the way. At this point, I think you all understand the idea that I'm trying to convey. So let's try something a little harder again. At first, this may seem challenging, but remember to observe. For this head angle, it's more ovular instead of circular, and one of the most defining features that I see is this triangular shape at the bottom of her chin. Don't be afraid to trace over a reference to learn. You should never trace someone else's work and pass it as your own, but you can most definitely trace to use as a learning opportunity. Tracing this image made me realize that this bottom line here isn't actually completely straight. I noticed that about half of it is angled this way, but the other half is angled another way. As you trace, you'll get more comfortable drawing your subjects to the point where you won't need to trace anymore. But instead, you'll be able to see lines and shapes and angles that you normally wouldn't see. Art isn't just about learning how to move a pencil, it's about learning how to see. And that's one of the main reasons why I love doing it. I know I went over that one a little fast, but there's really no better way to learn than to do it yourself. Make sure you pause the video and practice along with me, or you can go and look for references yourself and practice with those. Instead of a textbook where I have to memorize tons of muscle anatomy and bone structures, the way that I've learned how to draw is mostly through observation. I do agree that having a good understanding of the fundamentals is very important, but it's never been something I personally wanted to dive right into. I draw purely for fun, and the way I've been doing things actually allowed me to learn those fundamentals over time. But it's definitely a slower process. In any case, always remember to have fun and enjoy the process. Here is one last example of how I would go about drawing this reference. I can definitely see a circle being used for the general head shape, but you could also use an oval as well. I also see this very defined triangular shape for the bottom of her chin. And I also noticed that her jawbone here lines up with the other jawbone at this angle, rather than being completely straight. And since the head is round, not only would the eyeline wrap around the face like this, but her eyes would also show that curvature. This also applies to her mouth as well. If you watched till the end, thank you. And I hope after this video, you grab a piece of paper or tablet and start practicing. Please let me know if this video helped, DM me for commissions, and I'll see you all on the next one.